So let's start with a table. Let's see if you guys got this down. Nobody's cheating. Nobody's cheating yet. No cheaters. All right, 30, 45, 60. What goes here? 1/2. Root 2 over 2. Root 3 over 2. 1/2. Root 2 over 2. Root 3 over 2. Root 3 over 3. 1. Root 3. Okay. Let's do quadrants. Signs positive in the top 2. Right 2. First and third. Yes? So far so good? Okay. Quadrantals. Sign goes, what sign is 0? 0, 1. Okay. 0, undefined. 0, undefined. You guys don't even know it, but I'm starting to get you in my cult. Like you're all chanting together. It's so creepy. Okay. What?
Said you're definitely part of a gang back in college.
I cannot confirm nor deny.
It's a big one too.
It's a big.
You probably had to have a bounty to get in, like 10 bodies or something.
You know, there's 10 of something. All right, let's see. What'd you guys get for 21? 55. Yeah, just reference angles? 55, 24 is 35? Should be 35. Easy so far? 27 should have been pretty easy. 150? What's sine of 150? 30 has a, or 50, 150 has a reference angle of 30. So your answers were all the top row. So 1/2, square root of 3 over 2, square root of 3 over 3, 2 root 3 over 3, square root of 3, right? Tangents in the, or sorry, sine, 150 is in the second quadrant, right? So only sine is positive, so it should have went positive, negative, negative, positive, negative, negative. Yes? Are we good with those? So, for number 27, your job was to find sine of 150, cosine of 150, tangent of 150, cosecant of 150, secant of 150, and cotangent. Stupid thing. Cotangent of 150. What is my reference angle for a 150 degree angle? 30 degrees. So what's sine of 30 degrees? 1/2. And then cosine of 30 is square root of 3 over 2. This would be square root of 3 over 3. That's the reciprocal of that. That's the reciprocal of that. And that's the reciprocal of that. Right? So we have all the values. Now you just got to figure out positive or negative. 150 is in the second quadrant. So sine is positive in the second quadrant. Cosine's negative. Tangent's negative. So if that goes positive, negative, negative, should be positive, negative, negative. On your quiz on Tuesday, I will not ask you for 6 for 150. What I'm going to ask you is, what's the tangent of 150? Just that. So if you can do all 6, you should be able to do just one of them. Right? Good so far? Okay. How about 30, 120? If I change all these to 120s, what's the reference angle for a 120 degree angle? 60. So basically, sine of 120, it's basically going to be this row now, right? So now it's going to be root 3 over 2, 1/2, root 3 over 3, 2, root 3 over 3, right? 120, again, is in the second quadrant, so positive, negative, negative, positive, negative, negative. Yes? Good? So far, so good? How about 36, 420? What should you do with 420? What? Oh, I skipped one. I wanted to talk about that one too. All right. So sine of 7 pi over 6. I want everybody to watch this. I'll bet everybody last night put that into degrees. Yes? 7 pi over 6. How do you change that to degrees? 7 times 180 divided by 6. 180 divided by 6 is 30. 30 times 7 is 210. Solving this and solving this is solving the same problem. Yes? 30-degree reference angle, third quadrant, right? Sine of 30 is 1/2. Third quadrant, sine's negative, negative 1/2. Agreed? I want to show you guys something. I want to minimize. Where'd she go? There she is. Okay. Open back up. Come on. You can do this. Maximize. Open. Okay. I want you guys to look at this, but I want you to look at all the, so any angle in the first quadrant, what's the reference angle? Whatever the angle is, right? 30 degrees is pi over 6. Where's a 30-degree angle in the second quadrant? 150? What do you notice about the 30-degree reference angle? If this is pi over 6, that's 5 pi over 6. All right. Where's the 30-degree angle down here? 210, so it's 7 pi over 6. 330, that's a 30-degree angle in the fourth quadrant. That's the equivalent of 11 pi over 6. Do you notice anything? What do you notice? They're all over 6. I wonder if that pattern continues. So let's see. How about a 60? 60 is the same thing as pi over 3. 120 would be a 60-degree angle, right, in the second quadrant? Well, that's 2 pi over 3. 240, oh, can't really see it. How do I move that down? There we go. 240 is 4 pi over 3. And 300 is 5 pi over 3. Isn't that crazy? And then if you look at, I'm running out of colors here. If you look at 45, that's pi over 4. 135 is 3 pi over 4. 5 pi over 4. And 315 would be 7 pi over 4. This math doesn't actually work with really big denominators. Like if you had the question, what's the reference angle for an angle of 12 pi over 19? It's not going to work for that math because 19 is going to break. If you divide the circle up more into like 19 equal parts, there's going to be a lot of parts in each quadrant. Does that make sense? But if you only divide it into quarters, if you only divide pi over 4, like that's pi over 4, and then pi over 4, 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 like you don't have that many in each quadrant, right? So it ends up working out really nicely. If I ask you for what is the sine of 7 pi over 6, I know what the reference angle is right now. What's my reference angle? It's pi over 6. I'm just going to stay in radians. It's pi over 6. Now, if I want to convert that, what's 180 divided by 6? Now you can think of that as 30. But that's all I really need, isn't it? Pi over 6 is the reference angle. The other thing I need is, what's the quadrant? Well, if you remember, in radians, 1 pi is here, 2 pi is here, right? 7/6. Isn't that just going to be a little bit bigger than 1? Great, third quadrant. Isn't that really all I need is the reference angle in the quadrant anyway? There's no need to convert that back into degrees, actually. What I actually like to do with this table is I like to add in here. This is the same thing as pi over 6. This is the same thing as pi over 3. Because now, if I have to solve the question, what is the tangent of 7 pi over 4? All I need is reference angle and quadrant, isn't it? I don't care what 7 times 180 divided by 4 is. I really don't. All I need is the reference angle. Well, if it's 7 pi over 4, what's my reference angle going to be? It's pi over 4. It's always just going to be the same as the denominator. Now, pi over 4, that's the same thing as 45, so what's the tangent of 45? Come on. What's tangent of 45? Use that brain. Squint the eye. I don't know why squinting the eye works with these really well, but it does. It's 1. And then I got to figure out the quadrant. Well, 7/4. Isn't 7/4 almost 2? Because 8/4 would be 2, wouldn't it? So this is almost all the way around. But it's a little shy. So I'm in the 4th quadrant. Tangent in the 4th quadrant is negative. Now, if you want to, can you convert that into degrees? Feel free. I'm not saying you don't have to. I'm not saying you can't do it that way. You absolutely can. If you want to convert all of these into degrees and do it that way, that's fine. I'm saying I think there's an easier way to do that. Like if I give you on the quiz, what is the cosine of 5 pi over 6? What's my reference angle? It's pi over 6. Or 30 degrees. What quadrant am I in? Well, 5/6 would be just a little shy of 1, right? Because 6/6 would be 1. Well, that means it's got to be just a little shy of getting to there, which means I'm in the 2nd quadrant. Cosine of 30 degrees is square root of 3 over 2. Cosine in the 2nd quadrant is negative. The answer is negative square root of 3 over 2. That's how I do those. Does that kind of make sense with the radians? Again, if you want to convert all your radians to degrees, feel free. But I think you're going to just be adding a lot of steps along the way as you go throughout the year. You know, the reason we have radians is they make life a lot easier sometimes. They're smaller numbers. You don't have to deal with these giant numbers, you know. So are we good up through 45? Yes? Feeling pretty confident with those? Yes. Yeah, just subtract 360. You can get it back to within.
Okay.
Yeah. We never want to deal with angles that are bigger than 360 or like negative, really. So that's where remember those questions where I gave you 1,125 degrees and say find a coterminal angle between 0 and 360?
Yeah.
Like this angle's terrible. Nobody wants to deal with this angle. But just subtract 360, subtract as many times as you need until you get back within this range. Now it's easy to deal with. Because with this, you're just going around the circle many, many times. Where you stop really is all that matters, right? So these are the questions where, like, running directly to third base doesn't really matter. All that matters is I got to third base. How I get there don't matter. All right. So we good so far? How about 48? All it's saying is when does sine equal a half? Again, what's my reference angle now? Because now you're using the table backwards, right? Instead of saying what's sine of 30, we're saying when does sine equal a half? What happens to be a half all the time when it's got a reference angle of 30 degrees, right? That's a positive 1/2, right? When is sine positive? Top two quadrants. So, what's a 30 in the first? I didn't really need you to do them in radians. You can do them in degrees. Sorry, I meant to tell you that, but I totally forgot. So, sine of what's a 30 in the first? 30. What's a 30 in the second? 150. Done. There's your answer to 45. 30 and 150. If you put pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6, air high five, you did a good job. How about number 51? When does secant equal the square root of 2? Well, secant will equal the square root of 2 in the same place cosine will equal, the reciprocal of that is root 2 over 2. So what's my reference angle? 45. And this is cosine or secant, and it's positive. What quadrants is cosine and secant positive? Right 2. Great. What's a 45 in the first? 45. What's a 45 in the fourth? 315. Bingo, bango. There's your two answers. There should be two answers to those questions every single time. $57. What's the answer? What? 7. Should be 7 degrees. Oh, yeah, 54. So 54, when does tangent equal square root of 3? So my reference angle is 60, right? What quadrants am I in? When is tangent, that's a positive number. First and third. What's 60 in the first? 60. What's the 60 in the third? 240. From now on, you're going to hear me say that a lot. What's a 60 in the third? What's a 60 in the second? What's a 60 in the fourth? Does that make sense? Because we're not going to think of 240 as 240 anymore. We're going to think of 240 as a 60 in the third quadrant. Are we good with those? Now, when you get to 60, this is a two-step process. The first question is, when does cosine equal square root of 3 over 2? There's two answers to that question. There are two answers to that question. So, what's my reference angle? When is cosine equal square root of 3 over 2? 30. And then it's a positive square root of 3 over 2. So when is cosine positive? First and fourth. So 30 in the first is a 30. 30 in the fourth, 330. But then there's a part 2 to that question. It says tangent is also basically positive. What quadrants is tangent positive? First and third. Which of those two answers is in the first or the third quadrant? 30. So every single question in that last section, there's two answers to the first part, but then the second part will just restrict you down to one or the other of those two answers. Does that make sense? So let's do 63. When does sine equal a positive a half? When does sine equal positive 1/2? 30 and what other quadrant do I need to be in? Second. So what's a 30 in the second? 150. Does anyone not see how the answer to this is 30 and 150? Okay. What's the second part? Cosine's negative, right? It says cosine has to be less than or equal to 0. When is cosine negative? Second and third? Which of those two answers is in the second or third quadrant? 150. Bam, that one's out. I can't tell if you guys think this is easy now or if you're just totally lost. Because I'm getting some deer in headlight looks. I'm not sure what direction I need to go in here. If I need to, like... Oh, that's why. All right. I'll do 63 now, not 61. You guys could speak up. When sine equals square root of 3 over 2? 60, right? That's my reference angle. But what quadrants am I in? When is sine negative? Bottom two. What's a 60 in the third? 240. What's a 60 in the fourth? 300, right? What's part two? It says cosine's negative. When is cosine less than 0? When's cosine negative? Left two? Which of those two answers in the left two quadrants? 240. Bang, that one's out. It's only, yeah. So when you did, basically, if you're looking at 47 through 54, each of those questions should have two answers. There's always going to be two answers. Technically speaking, there's an infinite number of answers to this. Right? Because how many times does sine equal square root of 3 over 2? Well, it's going to happen an infinite number of times because I can go around the circle an infinite number of times. We're only talking between 0 and 360 right now. How many times will sine equal square root of 3 over 2? Twice. What are those two answers? This one is 240 and 300. But then if there's a part 2, like the second section, there's still two answers to this, but the second part will just reduce you down to one of those two answers when you kind of do the overlap. Does that make sense? And yes, there will be some of these on the quiz and test coming soon. How about 66? When does sine equal 0? Sine equals 0 at 0 degrees and 180 degrees, right? There's two answers to that. That's a quadrantal. When does cosine equal negative 1? Just 180 degrees, right? So the overlap is, you really didn't even need that part. All you needed was that part, right? Because that one only has one answer. Yeah? Good? How about 66? Oh, that was 66. So that's the last question. We good? Feeling better about these? No? All right, pass those up.